Hey everybody, Jamie Starr here. Today on our video, I want to discuss the concept that degradation doesn't equal liberation, which is a not explicitly stated, but it is a very predominant idea permeating through liberal thought, and activities. So we're going to look at some examples of this, and then we're going to ponder and wonder who's benefiting from these things. Now, one of the things I do want to say right out in the beginning, because I am a sort of conservative, libertarian, anarchist type, what you do in your home, in the privacy of your own home, is none of my business. So that's why, when these things come out about Roger Stone's sex life and, who's doing what drugs, is Steve Bannon having a meth party, I don't care. That's gossip. It doesn't really matter much. Not until it affects your public life. Do I think it, and I don't think what you do in your private life should be weaponized against you into your public life. So if a married couple wants to have threesomes, go for it. That's your business. That's not my business. But what we're talking about is mainstream popular culture things here. So first thing we're going to look at is, and one of my examples of this is the LGBTQ pride parades. So here's a great example. You'd be told that this man dancing here in his underwear in front of this small girl waving a rainbow flag, this is liberation. Now, one of the things we're constantly told, and I don't know where this meme sort of generates from, is the rest of the world is laughing at us. They're laughing at us. Well, let me tell you, countries that don't tolerate this type of bullshit are laughing at us because of this. They know this isn't liberation. I mean, is this guy about to stick money? Okay, so that man just stuck money in that other guy's shorts in front of that little girl. So who benefits from these things? Well, that little girl might grow up to think that dancing around in her underwear is, just what she should aspire for. Those are the types of things she's being shown. But even in Eastern countries, we have, other countries are able to have pride parades without the degeneracy. I mean, maybe a little bit, you might find a guy with his shirt off, but they're not engaging in sex acts and stripping in the corners and everything like that. And I would constantly, one of the other things that I think a lot of this stuff should be looked at as is because you have people like Yuri Bezmenov, former KGB defector, who's come out and said a lot of this stuff is good for destabilizing. One of the things I'm going to end on is concerning how this stuff actually ties into the death of a culture. And, you see this in ancient empires, Greece, Rome and such, when this sort of degeneration becomes mainstream, when pedophilia, grown men in fucking Speedos dancing in front of little kids, when things like that start to become the mainstream, the civilization will collapse. And there is data to implicate that. So let's go through some more examples. Well, here are the details on California's sex education. So, topics include fisting, blood play, masturbation, oral sex, and more. So this is no longer just the school, which shouldn't be teaching you this stuff anyway. And again, there's research to show anytime these schools implement a education, whether it's sex education, death education, or whatever, in UK schools, they implemented death education, and you had small kids who now knew of the concept of suicide, contemplating and trying to commit suicide. The schools are now teaching sex education, and teenage pregnancies start happening. So a lot of this, while it may seem well-intentioned, it's really just introducing kids to concepts that they aren't ready for. And it's, again, the state taking over the role of the parent, which we all know is something I'm very much against, because that happens in crazy empires, totalitarian societies, so on and so forth. So, yeah, we don't need to get much into the details of this. Again, I'm just sort of providing an overview. So, I don't know how many parents think fucking fisting should be taught to their children. You know, that's something that very well could result in a trip to the hospital. So, there's that. You also had an instance in New York City when a teacher brought a bunch of kids to the Smitten Kitten sex shop, you know, a place you're supposed to be 18 or older to get into normally, but because you're with a teacher and it's in the name of education and inclusion, well then, you know, let's just let the kids go to the sex shops. What is fisting really? Now, this is Women's Health magazine, so this is being mainstreamed. So again, we don't need to get into the details, but let's just read the first little bit here. If your idea of fisting is having someone shove their clutched fist up your vagina, you've got it all wrong. Instead of that punch to the vag approach, fisting actually consists of your partner entering his or her fingers into your love tunnel one by one until all 5 digits are past the threshold. So, oh, so empowering. Just fucking stretch your box out like you're, you know, just got a train ran on you. So, and as they say, you can damage your vaginal muscles, so causing scraping and scratches. So why is this sort of dangerous sexual behavior encouraged? Oh, because we've decided degeneration and degradation is actually liberation. Here we have Allure magazine. 17 sex terms you were too embarrassed to ask about defined. Pearl necklace, impact play. And this is a thing here where we see, you know, again, and I would be remiss not to mention that, again, I find it very funny that the women you will find into these things, it goes one of two ways. Either they are your school teachers who have some sort of warped Mrs. Robinson fantasy, which is why you see more instances of school teachers banging their students than Catholic priests at this rate. It's either them where they're, oh, I'm so prim and proper all day long, and then when I get home, fucking tie me up in 50 Shades of Grey me, or you end up with these ones that are ultra prude but then support all of this in a virtue signaling manner. So, pegging, CBT, scissoring, so on and so forth. Figging, ridiculous. So, more about California sex education. 7 women get jaw-dropping real about what anal sex feels like for them. Cosmopolitan magazine. Cosmo is all about this. Everything you could possibly need to know about anal sex. Cosmo. Your first time anal sex questions answered by women who have had it. 34 anal foreplay tips you probably can't live without. So there's an outright encouragement of this. And this is also one of these weird things that happen when empires start to reach their peak and then just go downward, is there's this blurring of gender lines where they're basically now saying women, you know, they're basically saying women, the thing that's most important about you isn't your, you know, beautiful capacity for the creation of life. It's actually getting railed in your shithole the same way a gay man would. You know, you should be taking it. You should be on all fours like a gay man. And meanwhile, the men should all be these queens and cross-dressing, wearing dresses. And it's just, again, degradation being liberation. Here's an article from the Daily Mail, which I thought was really great. These slut walks prove feminism is now irrelevant to most women. So this is one of these things where something that might have been a good idea has just gone so far, it's now warped into inversion. Where, you know, you used to have women that were actually fighting to be treated as women, but taken seriously, work right alongside the guys, and, you know, that they should be viewed as more than baby makers. And now these women are like, I should just be able to go through the motions. I should be able to get railed out, and I should wear that on my sleeve, and you should respect me as if I am that woman. You know, as if I'm a respectable woman who manages a household and can raise children, even though, you know, I just got my box punched like I was fighting Mike Tyson with my pussy type shit. It's really ridiculous. So, big point here. American birth rates. We're not meeting replacement rates. And there can be numerous reasons for this. Obviously, with this one, with where the markers are, it seems economics are a part of this. And I can't help but wonder if part of the focus being diverted into these things has to do with, you know, sort of tricking people into the fact that they're where they may be losing economic mobility and liberation through financial choices. Well, you can go out in a pride parade and suck someone off in the middle of Fifth Avenue, so you're liberated. That's something to celebrate. Or, you know, women, you can just sleep around and, you know, emotionally damage yourself pretending you're just one of the guys, and, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, but the country around you will be collapsing, and as long as you're getting carnal pleasure and orgasms, everything's all fine. So it's an interesting dynamic where in all of these avenues there is this, you know, degradation equals liberation. We're becoming more liberated, more and more liberated. We're no longer bound by gender and, you know, all of this other, you know, antiquated ideas. And meanwhile, society around us is collapsing, and yet you don't see people really seeming to care or notice or thinking that there's something to these sort of conservative typical ideas that worked, that held things together. Like a thing I was pointing out in a conversation with my mother the other day is, you know, I find it very interesting. The more educated Americans seem to get, the larger the gap between rich and poor seem to get. You know, you also had Vox Day do a video about people failing upwards and how, you know, the concept of selling your soul, basically, where evil people at the top, you know, are benefiting greatly and engaging in this sort of behavior. And it's almost like they're tricking the lower class people into being like, oh, well, if you just engage in our forms of degeneracy, well, then, you know, you can be like us without the financial and status, you know, aspect attached to it. So the big question is, who benefits from this? Well, first, nations that want to see America crumble obviously benefit from it. It's, again, why Yuri Bezmenov spoke of sort of leftist rights causes being used as destabilization mechanisms. It's why countries like Russia, where they aren't straight right anti-gay, they're anti-gay propaganda, because they understand the cultural implications of normalizing it. Also, another thing that people forget when they talk about Russia being anti-gay, it's mainly the Muslim areas like Chechnya that are anti-gay, but, you know, the mainstream media won't mention that little tidbit. So, who benefits? Well, with all this feminist stuff, with women wanting to do anal sex and, you know, threesomes and get tied up and all this, well, pervy men, you know, me as a teenager benefited, because it's very easy to trick women into wanting to do things they wouldn't do otherwise when the culture is encouraging them, and you don't want to be seen as a prude or uptight. You should want to be liberated and empowered. And, you know, when the idea of empowerment is basically your body being used as a, you know, a just a cum rag, well, then, you know, guys are going to benefit from that. Who benefits from small kids being, you know, brought to these pride parades and children being sexualized in this manner? Well, pedophiles benefit from that. So in all of these aspects, you very much have the worst, most gross people in society benefiting from all this. Like, it's really like, if you look at the way the UK views grooming in terms of like grooming gangs and how they coax and sort of, you know, trick these people into these sexual arrangements, you really have the mainstream American culture grooming everyone into this sort of dysfunction. Now, there's numerous studies that show the least amount of sexual partners you have, the more fulfilled you are, the longer your relationships will last, and so on and so forth. So the culture, this degradation is liberation culture, really just creates broken people. And again, who benefits from everyone being destabilized? The ultra wealthy will, because there's no way you're going to get into their ranks if you're just consumed with carnal pleasures. The amoral, ultimately evil benefits from things going this far. And again, because of my political views, where personally I may discourage you from doing some of these things like fisting, but if you want to do it in the privacy of your own home, that's fine. But when it's in mainstream women's publications, that's when it should be a cause for concern. So I didn't want to make this video too lengthy. I really just wanted to point out this trend and speak of the dangers that will arise from it. So I think I'm going to end this video here. And I will have a subscribe star link in all the videos soon, and make sure you follow me on social media at Jamie Star Music, or it's at Jamie Star Music. But yeah, take care, everyone.